Welcome back to this channel. In today's video, we are going to start a series on gait deviations. Many of you found this channel because you had something going on with your walking that was a result of damage to your neurologic system, whether that was a stroke, brain injury, MS. These can all impact the way your body moves and, of course, impact how you walk. And if that is you, it can be really overwhelming to know what's causing me to walk this way. And of course, what are the best exercises to do to help normalize your walking? Each video in this series is going to go into a specific gait deviation, all of the things that potentially could be causing you to walk with that walk that doesn't look exactly normal. And of course, exercises to address some of the most common root causes for the most common gait deviations. If you're new to this channel, I'm Tara, I'm a neurologic physical therapist, and on this channel we talk about anything and everything related to mobility, health, fitness, and mindset with the end goal of empowering you with as many tools as possible to take full ownership of your rehab and your overall health. Now, before we dive into the first gait deviation in this series, I wanted to let you all know that we do have a membership program. And if you are someone that's dealing with a neurologic injury and you feel like going to physical therapy once or twice a week just isn't getting you the results that you want, I think you would absolutely get so much value out of our membership program. With our membership program, you get access to the entire vault of home exercises that I give to my patients that I see in person. Plus, you get access to our monthly Ask Me Anything sessions where you can bring in your unique situation or problems, and we kind of work through those together as a group, and our monthly webinars where we really get into the weeds of everything that you can do to optimize your brain health and recovery. To learn more about our programs and to sign up, you can visit rehab-hq.com, and I look forward to having the opportunity of serving you on the inside. But now back to our first gait deviation. Today we're going to go over circumduction. So what is circumduction? Circumduction is when you swing your leg around the side. Now, there are a lot of reasons why you could potentially do that. We're just going to highlight some of the most common reasons that I see that would cause someone to swing their leg around the side. And the first and the most obvious is that you just don't have strength in the muscles that will lift the leg and bring it through the front. So you have weakness in your hip flexors. So when you rotate your body like this and you lean a little bit, you can kind of get some momentum going to just swing your leg around the side. That's one. The next one has to do with spasticity. So what is spasticity? Spasticity, for those of you that have been around for a while, this will be a review. But for those of you that are new, spasticity is an involuntary contraction in a muscle or groups of muscles that is the result of a neurologic injury. Now, I really want to make it very clear that spasticity and dystonia are not the same thing. Spasticity happens when you have damage that shows up on imaging to a motor area of the brain. The most common muscles where you get this involuntary contraction that will cause you to circumduct are in the quadricep muscles, the muscles that straighten that knee out. So if that spasticity kicks in and your leg is straight and you can't bend it, well, you're going to have to swing it around the side in order to clear the ground. The other place that you can have this spasticity are in your plantar flexors, the muscles that point the foot down. Again, if that foot is pointed, you're getting that involuntary contraction in the muscles that point the foot down. It makes this leg longer. And if this leg is longer, the only way you're going to clear the ground is if you swing that leg around the side. Okay, so that is spasticity. But there's another condition that causes your muscles to involuntarily contract, and that is abnormal synergy patterns. Again, for a lot of you guys, this is going to be a review, but we do have a lot of new people on this channel. An extensor synergy pattern is something that does happen after damage to your brain. This can be due to a brain injury or a stroke. And the most common explanation that you will hear is that it is a developmental pattern, or it is a primitive pattern that is hardwired on our brain. If you look at babies when they're very little, they're either all extension or they're all flexion. That was hardwired on their brain. They were born with those patterns. And they're very, very helpful before our brains are fully developed because they are the first way that we can get around. You've seen babies, they roll, if they're on their stomach and they want to roll on their back, all they really have to do is extend everything and they'll flip over onto their back. If they're on their back and they want to roll onto their stomach, they have this pattern that's just built in that if they just flex up, they start to associate that pattern with rolling from their back to their stomach. And so then it looks like your baby's like thinking and they know how to move when really they're just making an association between this built-in pattern and being able to roll from their back to their stomach. So why do I explain it in that way? Is that sometimes while you're very, very weak or in the early stages of a stroke, one of the first stages that we go through before we get to voluntary coordinated movement, just think about that toddler or that infant, before they get to voluntary coordinated movement, you, after damage to your brain, will have this period of time where you're working in these patterns. Now, remember what I said about a baby's not really thinking, they're just associating, oh, if I trigger this thing, my body, or if I do something that makes my body go into all extension, I'll roll, therefore they'll figure out a way to kind of trigger that spasm when they want to move, or trigger that pattern when they want to move. You are kind of no different after that brain injury. You can associate that extensor synergy, remember that's hardwired before you get back coordinated movement, with the ability to stand. So an extensor synergy pattern, just like the baby when you tap their feet on the ground and the parents get all excited because they think their baby's about to walk, when really all they did was they tapped their feet on the ground and the baby went into that extensor synergy pattern. Somewhat, this is kind of like loosely related, somewhat that's kind of what you're doing immediately after your stroke. You have the stroke or you have the damage to your brain, you lose movement in that side of your body, you get these patterns, you learn how to trigger these patterns, you associate those patterns with certain movements, and it just kind of gets reinforced the more you do that movement. The more you stand, the more you walk, the more that pattern gets reinforced. So when does that become a problem? Well, when you start to want to move out of those patterns and move to coordinated movement, think about that toddler moving from infant to like 2 years old, 1.5, 2 years old. They want to start moving out of those patterns. Well, you want to start moving out of those patterns, but now you can't because you've learned that if you trigger that pattern, right, you're not going to fall because your knee's not going to buckle, right? You're all extension. Your hip is extending, your knee is extending, and your foot is pointing. That's an extensor synergy pattern. It would make sense that when you're walking, an extensor synergy pattern is much more valuable to preventing you from hitting the ground than a flexor synergy pattern. So you're not going to come out of that. You're just going to kind of swing that leg around the side, keep that extensor synergy pattern engaged. You're not really thinking about that, but I kind of think that's when I see people use this and they can't break that pattern up, it makes me think that it is probably some kind of a protective mechanism to make sure that you don't buckle when you go to stand on that leg again. Okay, so an extensor synergy pattern, the leg will not bend, might cause you to swing your leg around the side. The other thing that could potentially be going on, and I promise this is all important because when we get to the exercises, you want to know what exercises you need to focus on, and you're not going to need to focus on all of them. So just listen to this intro a couple of times so that you can really identify which issue is potentially causing your circumduction so that you can hyper focus on just the exercises that are addressing that particular issue. But the other one is the inability to dissociate or disassociate. When you have damage to one hemisphere of your brain many, many times, people lose the ability to disassociate, meaning the right side and the left side of the body working independently of each other. And what happens is they kind of link up together. Now, there's a lot of reasons why this happens. One is potentially that the healthy side of the brain is kind of trying to take over for the injured side of the brain. And so it gets into some of the neural wiring that's going on up in your brain, but there's some neurons that are helping both hemispheres of the brain at the same time. That's one explanation. There are others as well, but long story short, what happens is when one leg straightens out, the other leg straightens out, and when one leg bends, the other leg bends. So if you lose the ability for your legs to work independently of each other, when you are standing on your stronger leg, you're not going to be able to bend this leg. So what's going to happen is it's going to stay straight and move around the side. Now, before you go trying to kind of break up this pattern, let me just tell you it is very, very hard to do. And the reason is because when I first try and help someone to bend this knee and while they're standing, they don't want to do it because what can potentially happen is when you bend this knee is also going to bend. Okay. And you might even be that person. You might notice this because this I've seen as well. When people try and bend this leg to bring it through, the only way they can do it is by bending the other leg. So that's the inability to dissociate. You're trying to bend this leg to bring it through, and the other leg does this little bend thing. That's just, I see that occasionally, and I'm pretty sure that's the result of not being able to dissociate. You want to bend this leg, and this leg kind of has to bend. But on the flip side of that, from a safety standpoint, you can see why your brain would not want to do that. If you bend this leg, your strong leg is gonna give out potentially if your brain kind of knows that it can't kind of separate those two sides. Okay, so that's the other reason why you might be swinging your leg around the side. And then the other one is that you just don't have an AFO that is right for you. So what is an AFO? An AFO is an ankle foot orthosis. Some of you might have a plastic ankle foot orthosis. It stabilizes your lower leg or your ankle and your foot. And there are a variety of different types, and each AFO serves a different purpose. So one of the most common things that I see as to why someone might circumduct is because you have a plantar flexion contracture, meaning that you cannot get your ankle to 90 degrees. Your foot is slightly pointed. And in that case, what they do is they put a wedge underneath your AFO, okay? Because you can't get your ankle bent all the way, so they'll put a little wedge under your AFO. So what does that do? It lengthens this leg. So if they do that, it is very, very important that you adjust your shoes so that your other foot is also elevated. If you don't, and this foot is pointed because you don't have the range of motion in your ankle to get your foot all the way up, then this leg is going to be longer. And the only thing that you can do to clear the ground a lot of times is swing that leg around the side. Okay, so that's very, very important, and that's an easy fix. Just go back to the person that made your brace and ask them if either you can have a heel lift. I prefer that they actually build the sole of the shoe up, but a heel lift will work as well. The other type of AFO that might not be great for you is one that is what we call a floor reaction AFO. So a floor reaction AFO kind of pushes your shin bones backwards. They're either blue or black. You will see like almost looks like a shin guard on the front of it. That shin guard is pushing your lower leg backwards. Now, why do a lot of people get that type of an AFO early on? Is because you're very, very weak, and maybe initially your knee was buckling a lot. And so your physical therapist in the hospital before you left thought you needed something with that shin guard on the front to kind of push your lower leg back. The downside of that is that it locks your leg out, and it's very hard to unlock your leg. And so if you can't unlock your leg, and if you think about it, it's pushing your shin bone backwards as you're trying to step forward. And so that too just makes walking extremely difficult. It serves a purpose. It does serve a purpose, that type of AFO. It's better than your knee buckling. But because of that, some people just get in the habit of swinging their leg around the side because they can't really like advance their weight forward, but then also your leg just gets locked out and you can't unlock it. So those are the two reasons. I'm not a fan of those types of AFOs if you have any type of spasticity. And the downside is that initially you probably didn't have any spasticity in your lower leg, and then usually 3 or 4 months later, you start to get a lot of spasticity, and no one goes back and kind of changes that AFO for you. The other thing is that you're in an AFO that doesn't allow your ankle to bend, or it allows your ankle to point too much. So what's the best AFO if you are someone that circumducts and you want to start breaking up that pattern is an AFO with what we call a plantar flexion stop. So what a plantar flexion stop does on an AFO is it pushes your lower leg forward a little bit. There'll be like a little screw or a little plastic piece on the back of your AFO around the ankle, and it pushes your leg forward a little bit. That's the best kind of AFO if you have a lot of spasticity. So maybe initially you were in a solid AFO, meaning the ankle does not bend, and now you might need what we call an articulated AFO where the ankle does bend, and you want to put one of those little bumpers in the back to help kind of push that ankle forward. Okay, so the AFO, very, very important. That can also impact your walking and cause this problem, circumduction. So just a quick review, let's go through them. What are all the things that could potentially cause this? You could have weakness in the muscles that lift the leg up, spasticity, involuntary contraction of the knee muscles that straighten the knee out or point the foot. You could have an extensor synergy pattern, meaning the hip, the knee, and the ankle are all linked up together, and you can't bend your knee to bring your leg through. You have lost the ability to dissociate left from right, or you're in a poorly fitting AFO. So what do you want to do? If you have weakness in the muscles that are lifting the leg up, you want to do something where you're working on lifting the leg up. If it's because of spasticity, you want to do a lot of stretching of the ankle and of the quadricep muscles, and we'll go through that. You want to, if it is due to an extensor synergy pattern, you want to do something what we call like an out of synergy exercise where you're working each of these joints independently of each other so that you're not in that extensor synergy pattern. This is just a fun little hint for you to help you kind of go down the rabbit hole into a bunch of different exercises. But what do babies do to break up those patterns? They crawl and they get on their knees and they cruise. So on their knees. So just something to think about, because that's something most of you have probably had experiences with, and you can definitely incorporate those types of exercises in to break up those synergy patterns. Dissociate, what do you want to do is you want to work on working your left and the right side of your body doing opposite things. And then AFO, definitely work with your orthotist. But all of that said, let's go in and dive into a few exercises in each of these categories to help you normalize your walking pattern. All right, so for this exercise, this is for if you have weakness or the inability to flex your hip. Remember, that was the first kind of root cause problem that might cause you to circumduct. So this is just relearning how to isolate those muscles, bringing that knee up towards your chest. Now, some of you might need to have someone help you to stabilize the ball, and that's okay. Or if you're a little bit stronger and you feel like your leg just keeps wanting to roll out to the side, just think about bringing your knee up towards your opposite hip. That should help to not let that ball roll out to the side. But now, if you're someone that's a little bit weaker and you cannot bring that knee up to your chest on the ball, the other one you can do is start with your knee slightly bent, start on your side. We call this gravity eliminated. So anytime you move parallel to the floor, you take away gravity and you can work this. Now, what I would recommend is start with your knee slightly bent. You might need someone to help you bend your knee up. And then all you're working on is basically just letting that leg fall. That's exactly what I want you to think about, is just kind of using your body, rolling a little bit and letting that leg fall. Okay? You're going to roll and just let that leg fall. That's if you have true weakness in the muscles that lift that leg, and that is the reason you are circumducting. Now, for this exercise, this is for that spastic quad. And the reason for this is what you're trying to do is what happens with that circumduction is that your leg is in that spastic position, and then you can't relax it or bend your knee to bring it through. Now, I like this position because this is exactly the position your entire leg is in when you're actually trying to bend that knee. So when we actually try and bend the knee to bring our leg through, our leg is slightly behind us. That's why laying on your back and having your leg off the side kind of puts you in that position. And this exercise is actually addresses two root causes. Could be for spasticity in the quads, the muscles that straighten your leg out, that involuntary contraction. If that's the case, what you really want to focus on is locking the leg out and then letting it relax. What you're trying to do is that your leg is probably going into that spastic pattern, or it's going into the extensor synergy while you're standing on the leg. And some of you, the problem is you can't transition from stand, keep that leg straight to relax. Okay, there's actually a moment where you do just need to let your leg relax in the walking cycle. And it's right at the end of that standing phase before you swing your leg through. So that's what I really want you to focus on. But you can also see that this is out of a synergy pattern. So remember I said that extensor synergy pattern, when your hip extends, your knee wants to extend also. So what we're doing is we're putting the hip in extension and working on bending that knee. So remember I told you we got to break up that extensor synergy pattern, so we have to work all these joints independently of each other. And you want to be able to keep that hip straight and bend that knee. Again, this is that point in the walking cycle, right at the end of standing on that leg before you swing the leg through. There's a moment where the hip is extended and that knee needs to just kind of relax and bend through. Okay? So think stand, relax. Okay? Stand, relax. I do have the weight on my ankle because it does help to get that knee to bend. Most of you get that leg locked out, you just can't bend it. If that is you, put that weight on. But what it also does is your leg might be more likely to want to use a spastic pattern because there's that extra weight on the leg. So you're going from like stand, that quad really wants to work, and then having to relax it. And that's working on that transitioning from a contraction to a relax phase in a muscle. Okay, this is by far the most underrated, or maybe the most boring, so that's why some of you don't do it, but it is the most underutilized exercise for a spastic ankle, and that is just stretching in standing. I cannot stress it enough. The tighter your calf muscles are, the faster or the easier it's going to be to kind of trigger that spasm. And this goes into a lot of like some of the root causes of that spasticity, and I've done whole videos on this, but there's something inside of our muscles that is called a stretch reflex. And when your muscles are tighter or they have less like kind of elasticity in it, you kind of trigger that stretch reflex a little bit faster. And that stretch reflex, inhibiting that stretch reflex is what some people think contributes to that spasticity. So what is the stretch reflex? The stretch reflex is built into all the tendons in our body or the muscles in our body. And when that muscle is rapidly lengthened, it will rapidly contract. It's kind of like a protective mechanism. I liken this to like our seatbelts. You know, if you go really fast with your seatbelt, it'll pull you back. But if you do it slow, you can kind of lengthen that seatbelt out. It's kind of a similar mechanism for probably a similar reason. But then what we have is we have another area of our brain that inhibits that. Because of course you could see how that would be problematic anytime you move really fast. You know, having that contraction is not ideal. So we have something that overrides that. And that's what they think is impacted after a neurologic injury. Some people think that. Okay, so the tighter your muscle is, the faster you're going to elicit or trigger that stretch reflex. The more elasticity you have in your muscles, the longer you're going to have to get your muscle, or the more lengthening your muscle is going to have before you elicit that stretch reflex. There'll be more of a lag, if that gives you a better visual, okay? So you always want to be stretching that calf muscle out if you have a lot of spasticity in your calf. And again, remember, when your foot's pointed, it makes that leg longer, and you're going to be more likely to circumduct or swing that leg around the side. So that is covering the root causes of like spasticity that's contributing to your circumduction. But now let's go ahead and go into some things that you could do if you have an extensor synergy pattern. Again, a kind of another boring activity, but you're just going to do a step down and hold. Now, why are you doing that? Is you're breaking up that extensor synergy pattern. Now, we already went into one that I said you could use as well to break up that pattern, that one we did on your back where you were bending your knee. This is kind of just like taking it to the next level. So I would call this like a progression, and you're literally just going to stand. Now, this covers an extensor synergy pattern, but it also is dissociating. Remember, I told you a lot of times your right and your left leg want to work together. So you're kind of getting like a 2-for-1 with this one. You're just standing, relearning how to bend this knee while the hip is straight, breaking up that extensor synergy pattern. Think that baby, all flexion, all extension. This is a little bit of a different position. And then also, you have to stand really strong on this leg, so you're having to work really hard to keep this leg straight. What you want to focus on, if you keep rotating this way, it's because you want to get both of your legs straight at the same time. Okay, so if that is you, you want to really focus on relax. It's the same cue you want to be giving yourself in the part of the walking cycle where you're going from standing phase to swinging phase. There is a moment in there where you got to think relax. Okay? And so that's what you want to be thinking about so that you can carry this over into actual walking, is just relax and just hold it. You want to hold it until you feel like you don't want to straighten that leg out, okay? And then the way you make this more difficult is you just go to a higher step and do that step down again. All right, and then this is my go-to favorite for those of you, some of you OGs have been around here forever. You haven't seen me showing this in a while, but this is one that I used to show a lot because I do absolutely love it. This is just a skateboard. Anything with wheels to work on swinging that leg through without circumduction will address so many issues. If your leg is spastic, having something on wheels makes you feel like you don't have to put so much effort into it. So many times that spasticity will not be as strong, but it also makes it easier if you're someone that's just starting to learn how to dissociate and you want to start bending this knee. Because it's a little bit higher, it's going to help you to almost start with that knee in a slightly more bent position. So that's the other benefit of it. If you have weakness, meaning the first reason I gave was just true weakness, it will address that because you can just bring that leg straight through. So absolutely, absolutely love this activity. I will put a link for this little mini skateboard in the description below, but you can buy those furniture sliders, those work. There's a lot of different things you can that work, but just something with wheels on it. Absolutely a game changer if you are someone that circumducts and wants to get out of that circumduction. But that is it for this video. I only gave you like one exercise in each category. If you are someone who is trying to fix your walking problems due to a neurologic injury, again, remember, if your in-person physical therapy sessions are not enough, you can't just do your exercises once or twice a week. If you want to take full ownership of your exercise routine and really take your recovery, supercharge it to the next level, you would really get a lot of value out of our membership program. Again, to learn more about our membership program and to sign up, you can visit rehab-hq.com. You can also go there and schedule a discovery call and talk to someone to get all your questions answered to see if it is the right program for you. So to learn more about that or to schedule that discovery call, go to rehab-hq.com. If you're new to this channel and you haven't yet subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and turn on that notification bell so that you will get notified every time I upload new videos, including this series, which we're going to be going through a ton more gait deviations that you all are dealing with. I enjoyed spending time with you all today, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a good day.